my goodness. I'm so excited about today, guys.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
We're so pumped to be here for Core 90 training with the community. My name's Jeff Richmond.
I'm Lexy Sanchez.
And today we're going to be talking to you about something that's really been important for us in our sales careers and has really helped us to grow along the way. Hold on, let me move something that's on my forehead there. There we go. It's a cool logo, but it was making me look like I had a face tattoo. And I see so many awesome people who are great friends and colleagues. If you don't know, by the way, the community is our growth, support, coaching, training, everything organization here at eXp Realty, the greatest real estate brokerage in the whole world. And if you're a guest with us today, we're so glad that you're joining us. That's amazing. We're all here to learn so that we can earn more. And that's really great.
Yep. So thanks for joining us. Today, as Jeff said, we're going to talk about communication and what we're calling relationships versus relation. And why did we decide to call it that? Well, we've been having a lot of conversation lately around communication. And it's one of those things that most of us in real estate feel like we have under control, and maybe we do, and maybe we don't, or maybe it's a combination. Does this sit familiar with any of you guys? Maybe you are on it. When you get a new lead that enters your ecosystem, you pick up that phone and you are like, hey, this is Lexy Sanchez. I saw that you just entered some information on our website. I wanted to let you know that I'm a real person and I'm here to help you. What can I do for you today? How can I help you buy, sell, or invest in real estate? So, right, maybe you're just on it with your new leads.
And in fact, you know what? Let's do an exercise really quickly. Let's have you guys hit us in the chat. How many of you have ever had the experience where you're like, I'm on it, I'm communicating super well with my client, and then they buy or sell with someone else? Right? I'll raise my hand. I'm going to go ahead and out myself on that one. Jordan's willing to be vulnerable. Jordan says yes. Steve says, well, yeah. Daniel, yes. Indy says, yep. Right? Like, this is something that we've all experienced. It's like, I'm crushing it. I'm communicating so well. Christine says, unfortunately.
Yeah. Right?
It feels so confusing and stressful when that happens. And we've tapped into some of what goes on that leads to that event happening. Because honestly, we'd all like to avoid that a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and see if we can get our screen share up and running. We've got some cool visuals for today.
So a lot of you guys, so we were talking about communication, and a lot of us think that we have a really great communication plan. A lot of us do have really great communication plans. Some of us are on top of it with our leads. Some of us are just really interactive. Man, I hope you are really interactive on a constant basis with your current clients, right? Otherwise, you are going to lose a sale in the midst of it. And you're going to go, what happened? Well, maybe your communication isn't as good as you think it is. And then a lot of us are really on our game with our past clients. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's rare that we work with an agent or that we know an agent that is really kind of firing on all cylinders. They have their lead game, communication game on it. They are going. They have a plan for when a new lead hits their ecosystem. They know what to do, when to do, and how to feather them in as the relationship continues. Same thing with your current clients. We tend to be really interactive with them in the moment because cha-ching, you don't get paid unless you close the deal. And so that means you've got to get them into the MLS. You got to show them houses or get their house listed, and you've got to close the transaction, right? So we tend to be really focused on that communication segment. And then when they become past clients, maybe we just put them on some sort of a drip campaign. They get our email or some sort of a newsletter. And then that's kind of it. We love them and leave them, so to speak. So today, we were really trying to think about, listen, what goes into relationships? Because ultimately, this is a relationship business. We all like to say that we're all here to help people. And of course we are, but it's still a business. And a lot of us tend to rely on our instincts about communication and relationship. Today, we wanted to talk to you about how we take the concept of relationship and communication and kind of lay it all out according to those three different groups that we tend to deal with on a regular basis. So without further ado, that just gives you a little bit of background on what we're doing today, because what we want you to have is positive, healthy, long-lasting, effective, and impactful relationships, and not end up in the zone of relationships. And I'm sorry, I used the bad word there, but I will tell you, it's just kind of poopy. You get down in the dumps when that falls apart, and it can happen really easily. And we're going to try to help you today to avoid that.
I love it. I wish I had queued up like the whomp whomp sound, right? It's so fun. So if you don't know who we are, we're Jeff and Lexy. We're both coaches in the real estate space. We've been producers. Currently, we're growth leaders at this amazing company, eXp Realty, and we're super proud to be here today with the community, loving on agents. Our
biggest passion is education. We love real estate. We love working with people. And so this is why we do Core 90 with our colleagues and other leaders in the industry. So we're excited to be here today to present this information.
So let's jump right in and let's get started on some content for the day. And, the way that this works is we like to keep things nice and interactive. So if you have a question along the way or something that's like burning and it can't wait, let us know. Just unmute, holler at us. That's fine. And otherwise, we're going to keep moving and assume that things are good. We'll have some Q&A at the end as well. But we're going to try and cover a lot of territory today. So relationships are complex. We all know this, and that they are definitely built on communication.
Have you guys ever had a friend or a family member or someone that you say, oh my gosh, I haven't seen them in 10 years, but when we get together, it's like we've never skipped a beat.
Yes.
Right. But guess what? It doesn't happen all that frequently with clients. Right? Because if you don't talk to a client for 10 years, guess what? They don't know who the heck you are. They are like, where have you been my whole life? We've bought and sold 2 other houses. My children have grown up, gotten married, and bought houses, all with different agents because you were crickets, right?
In fact, the last time I saw an NAR stat on this, National Association of Realtors does these, statistical surveys. You can look them up. But the last one said that 89% of people who had bought and sold a house that year said, I would use the same agent again. So they're saying that about you, but only 7% of them actually do end up using the same agent. Remember, that's 7 to 10 years later, or 5 to 10 years later, depending on which statistic you're looking at. So why is that disparity? Why did it go from 89% said yes to only 7% that did it? And that has to do with communication.
Communication. So when we think about it as real estate agents, we're really dealing with multiple relationships at any given time. And we're juggling all 3. So think of it as 3 balls. You've got leads, whether those are brand new leads hitting your ecosystem because you purchased them, or they came onto your KV Core website, or some other way. You have a lead. So we've got those people. Those are people that are potential clients, but they're not quite there yet, right? Then you have active clients. Those are people that maybe you already have set up as a buyer in the MLS. Maybe you're already showing them properties. Maybe you have a listing with somebody. Those are people that you're actively working with right now. They're already in that client status. And then you have your past clients, people that you have worked with, you've closed a transaction, hopefully with, or maybe it fell through, but they're still kind of in communication with you. So at any given time, you should be juggling those 3 balls. So you're going to have to manage the communication and relationships with those 3 types of people.
It's kind of like the ghost of Christmas present, past, and future.
Well, kind of, and hopefully they're all future and not past.
Right.
But the thing about it is that when we think about those relationships, they're very different. They may all end up in the same place. We all hope they end up in that past client category. But the communication looks and feels different depending on where they are, and the needs are different. So a lead doesn't have the same needs as a past client. And current clients certainly have different needs than leads and past clients.
Yep. So this communication just needs to be ongoing, but in layers. And we're going to talk about that today, according to the needs of the relationship. It's really specific. So the question has to become then, how can you accomplish all of this simultaneously without customizing a communication plan for each person? And the answer is you can't. You can't do that. And so we're going to cover exactly what do you do then.
But you know what? The problem is, I think a lot of people, because we do care so much about the people we work with and about the quality of work and communication that we provide, we do try to customize with every person that enters into our sphere. And it's maddening, and eventually it will lead to failure, your failure, which is what we're trying to avoid. So there are going to be times when you can really customize and get deep and personal and relational with someone. And then there are other times that communication just needs to be efficient and streamlined. So we're going to talk about that, because the reality is you can't.
Right. It's almost like dating. Like we see a lot of agents who try to be married to 60 clients at once. It's like, that's not going to, there's too much going on all the time. You can't pull it off. So what do you do instead?
Well, you build a plan that allows people to enter your ecosystem at an appropriate level of communication. What does that mean? We're going to talk about it. And continuously upcycle the relationship throughout the year. Now, upcycling is new. I mean, it is and it isn't. In this context, Jeff and I really created this word and this concept. And it's, we're going to describe it a little bit later, but I will tell you, you might think of it as a recycle, but it's not really a recycle. It's not an upcycle because you're changing it. It's an upcycle because the reality is we're always looking for the up point in a relationship. And that means that you have established trust. You've communicated with them before effectively at numerous different times in numerous different ways, and you have what we would truly call a lasting relationship.
But that means we have to define that word. So let's do it. What is a relationship? And in fact, I'd love to see some people put a couple words around this, maybe in the chat. And so I'm going to kill screen share for a second. So do us a favor. Pop into the chat, especially, for those of you who are here live, there's a beauty in being on the live call, is go ahead and tell us, what is a relationship? Or at least give us some words around that. Like if you were defining relationship, what are some types of words that you would use? So Joanne says care, connection, doing life together at some level. I love that. Yeah, involvement, Steve says, super Steve. Daniel says trust. Absolutely. Michelle says connection. You bet. Delita says first name basis.
Oh, yeah.
You'd hope so, right? This is awesome stuff, guys. So all of these add together a genuine concern, care, personal investment in their well-being. We're getting a lot of stuff,
right?
And this all kind of adds together.
What about this? Agency. The word that we are all bound by is this concept of agency. And that is all of that really embodies all of those things that you're talking about. It's about genuine concern, care, communication, helping people to make really important decisions within the context of your fiduciary responsibility and being their agent and helping to guide them through the process. So we decided that relationship today is defined as ongoing interaction over time with an intentional outcome of trust and connection. So bam, you guys are like on it. I love it. And I mean, I wanted to say that a relationship is somebody to clean up the mess in the kitchen after you make dinner, which it definitely should be.
It is.
But but really in this context, and we put the word ongoing interaction, and that's tough. Because it's easy when you're, meeting with inspectors and all of that. It's not so easy when you're trying to warm up those leads or when you're trying to keep engagement and in relationship with people that you just simply don't see very often.
Yep. And in fact, we're going to periodically today, we're going to cycle back to an analogy around kind of dating, because it's something that we can all relate to. And how that works. And what we find is true is that sometimes agents try to, and I said this kind of before, to be like married to everyone simultaneously. And that level of relationship with a very large database is unsustainable. We'll talk about why that is. So we're going to talk about how does that cycle work? What's the upcycle that we can leverage to be able to do this correctly? And we hear agents say this.
I've been in communication with them.
Cool. But have you really?
So you know what this reminds me of is if you've been to trainings or watched videos about communication plans, or maybe you've gone to a pitch from a company that's like, we're going to do all of your social media posting for you, and we're going to send out this, and we'll set up your past client communication and blah, 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 blah. But we think, okay, I need to have, 11 touches in this amount of time, or 37 million touches in this amount of time. I don't even know. It swirls in my head because there's so many different things, right? And we want to find the happy medium between what is authentic to who I am as an agent, as a person, as a member of my community, but also what are the needs of the people that I serve. And sometimes we get in that mindset of we need to check the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I sent,
Super
I
true.
had 6 touches with all of my past clients this month. How many did you have, Jeff? I mean, does that really make sense? Kind of, but we need to think about it. And do you consider that communication? Well, yeah. I mean, but I've been in communication with them. Maybe that's why they worked with somebody else, because they weren't getting the kind of communication. So let's talk about what that looks like.
Totally. So, we defined what relationship is. And so I think it's only valid to define what is a relationship. And sorry to use that word if you're offended by it. Here we are.
It rhymes.
This is big boy, big girl school today. So listen, put in the chat for us, because this one's going to be funny. What are some words that you think of when you think of a relationship? So when a relationship falls apart, right, and it becomes horrible, what are some things that would define a relationship? This is not a good thing, right? Give us some terms around that, though. If you had to guess, what would that be? Let's get some participation here. Daniel says it would be uncomfortable. Yes. Liz says lies, lies, and more lies. Awesome. Michelle says fake. Yeah, absolutely. Awkwardness, said Steve. Awkwardness is, oh man, just hearing that, fake and lies and uncomfortable and awkwardness. Absolutely. I might add disconnected. I might add non-communicative.
Right. What about flaky?
Or expectant, right? Like, I think they're supposed to do something for me because of whatever. Yeah, flaky, no integrity. Michelle, again, awesome. Yeah, these are great. Client says they know everything and they don't want to listen to you. Oh, I've had that one before, right? So there's a lot that can start to really pepper into this. What's our definition here that we had?
Is sporadic communication without purpose. Because if a relationship is based on communication and you have inconsistent communication that is not intentional, it does not have it's not outcome focused. There's no purpose to it. That's when a relationship becomes relation poo-poo, because it's not built on anything solid.
That's super true. So now we know what a relationship kind of is and is not. I think it's really valid for us to transition into talking about communication. And this is where you guys are going to want to grab your pens or pencils, because we're going to cover a lot of territory moving pretty quickly here today. So put on your thinking caps.
So we know we're going to move into something that's a little more on the theoretical side. But before we do that, I'm liking this interaction part. So I want some examples of what you guys think is good communication.
We'll take it off screen share for a second. So give us examples of good communication in the chat. We're going to read your answers as you pepper them in. Good communication. And remember, leaders, jump in here. How you participate here is how you participate everywhere. We're going to love seeing your answers in the chat. A phone call. Absolutely. Great communication. Love it. What else? Consistency. Yes. Responding to someone in a timely manner. Christine says, yes. Thank you. We've got Michelle, Liz, and Christine killing it today. That's great.
Those are great.
What other types of things make for good communication? Follow-up, says Twinkle. That's awesome. Twinkle Bawa. Love it. Thank you for being here. Really good stuff. Yes, follow-up is super important.
It's a hard one, right? Open, honest, with integrity and constant. Yep.
I try to say, I hear you, Delita says. By the way, great book by Michael Sorensen, all about validation and empathy, called I Hear You. I'd recommend you read it. It's awesome. Joanne Graham says, asking good questions.
I love that. Questions are so important.
Yep. So good stuff.
Yep.
So let's take it back over to the presentation. And I saw that we had some more coming through in the chat. We'll try and grab those. We did becoming Facebook friends and engaging with each other. Says, hi, absolutely. Christine says, listening and responding. You bet.
Love it. Okay. So let's talk. I said we were going to move into the kind of theoretical. And so here we go. You guys have all probably seen and heard this before. So go ahead and explain.
You bet. Well, there's a gentleman by the name of Albert Mehrabian. That's a cool name, Mehrabian. And so he's an emeritus professor, which is just a fancy professor of psychology at UCLA.
He was a professor.
He's kind of pseudo-retired,
sort of, yeah.
Hangs out, teaches some
That
classes.
means he's probably not wanting to work so much, but
He's
can't
old.
get away from it.
And his studies focused on the conveyance of emotion through different modalities. We're going to talk about them. Once you see these on the right, we're going to open up what those 7, 38, and 55 mean here in a second. You're going to be like, oh, I've seen this before, or I've heard this before, and this is the guy who came up with it. But this is commonly addressed in sales and or customer service.
So this is interesting. And there is one person on this call that has attended some of my trainings in a past life, in a past industry. But I talked a lot about this. And it's because in sales and customer service, it's all about the emotional response that we have to interacting with someone. And at the end of the day, that's really what communication is all about. So let me give you an example. How many of you have walked up to a desk? Let's say you're going to ask a question in an office, and you walk up to the desk and the person at the desk does not look up, does not acknowledge you, just keeps on about their business. And then when they look up, they say something like, may I help you? Or yes. Or maybe they don't say anything. Have you guys ever had that experience?
You guys, I'm not a murderer, but those are like the moments, right?
Crime of passion about to happen, right? Okay, so what's the opposite experience that we've all had before? You walk into an office, someone is busy at work, they look up and they're like, hi, oh my gosh, good to see you. How can I help you today?
Boom.
Totally different feeling. And so I used to teach this. I've noticed store workers being glum and unengaging lately. Right. Okay. And it's such a downer. It's like, it can take you from being at a 10 to being at a 2 or a 1, like instantly.
It steals your energy.
There's a lack of humanity in that experience for them and for you. Right. And we have to remember that communication is really just being able to share information 2 different ways. But when you add emotionality and connectivity to that, that's what creates, it creates feelings of sentiment, feelings of connection, trust. They like you. And remember, in business, what is it? We want people to know, like, and trust us.
Yep.
You cannot get those 3 items by having that glum, unengaging attitude. And so the first thing, and I oftentimes will teach this. I had my boss come into my office and lean forward on my desk, leaning in on my inbox, and it collapsed and she fell onto my desk. Oh my gosh, it got my attention. Ooh, well, that's a little.
Oh no, Steve says it. This happened yesterday ordering lunch, casual restaurant, walked across the foyer and I was the only one in the line. And a girl never spoke to me until I asked her how she was doing. She just stood there and stared at me.
Boo.
Yikes. Well, and you know, what's interesting in all of this, Lexy, and I want to prompt this, guys, that today we are talking about sales. And if you stick around to the end, I promise you this is going to up your batting average. You're going to make more money. Because why? Sales is a transfer of emotion. Remember that throughout this entire presentation today. Sales is a transfer of emotion, and that emotion ultimately is your responsibility if you're the salesperson.
Yep.
And we're going to talk about how to control that, and what this slide is going to be super important.
So what I used to teach with this in customer service was that you truly can make a first impression in the first 3 seconds or less. By using this, by understanding how we communicate with emotions in the way that we behave with other people. And this is whether it's a new person. So think about those new leads. If you're picking up the phone in the first 5 minutes and you're saying, hey, my name is Lexy. You were on my webpage. Oh, sure. I know people are just looking, but I've made a great impression because I have up energy. I'm enthusiastic. I'm wanting to be helpful. I'm making a connection with them. And the same thing goes with my, with my past clients, that I want them to know that I still engage, I still care. So what do these numbers look like? So 7% of communication. And so people understand communication by the words that we use, but only 7% of the meaning of the things that we say are actually come from the words that we use. So word choice is important, but it's not the most important thing. The second is 38%, and that's tone of voice. So I've got to use the words. I don't know if you have I've got to pick my words carefully, because those are, we do speak in language. So we need words, but the tone of those words, like, let's take the word sure. A lot of people don't like that as a response, right? Do you mind unloading the dishwasher?
Sure.
Sure. Totally different. Same word, different tone, completely different meanings. One is going to make me like, yay, I have the best partner in the world. The other one's going to be like, ugh, we're about to have a big fight. So no bueno, right? But it's the same dang word. It's just about how we deliver. But the last and most important segment is body language. So you can tell from across the street what somebody's mood is, right? Are they in a hurry? Are they angry? Are they upset? Are they sad? Are they mad? Are they happy? Are they having the best day? They're like skipping along. If I can see that from across the street, imagine what it is like face to face, right? So what does this all mean? What it means is that we have different ways that we communicate, and we need to be cognizant every single time we communicate in business.
And in fact, how many times have you guys been on, like, let's say a Zoom call? This is one of my very favorite things to do. And I like to watch the person who's not talking, right? So whether that's us, but like other people on the call, right? Just as they're hanging out. And you can see people when they start to lose track of the way that they look. It's interesting because some people have what do we call it? Like resting jerk face, or, that kind of stuff, that exists. But why does it exist? Because when we deactivate, whether it's our facial muscles or we lose track of what messaging our body's sending, very easy stuff like crossing your arms, right? You might be cold, but you might be sending a different message than cold to the person on the other side. They might be viewing that as cold in terms of the relationship, not cold in terms of the actual freezing temperature in the room. So we have to ask this question: if emotions convey high impact communication, how do we employ each of these modalities to effectively build what? Relationships. And that's what we're going to answer today, because we have to what?
We have to understand how to communicate, to whom, and when.
And that's what upcycling is going to do for us. So what is upcycling?
Okay, so upcycling is the art of rotating between various communication modes, layering them, in fact, to establish, so that would be your leads, to build, those are your current clients, and to develop deeper relationships over time.
So cool. And we're going to show you exactly how to do this, how we do this, and why we believe that some easy changes can be made to your business to get dramatically bigger results. And that's really what this is all about, making things easier, right? Who wants to have a harder life in business? Raise your hand if you're done. All right, perfect. So here's what we do. We create layers of impact across the modes of communication. What does that mean? Well, look on the right-hand side of the screen here. Written communication only impacts our eyes in terms of text. And that is fantastic and can be highly communicative. But how many people have ever gotten a text message and you misread the tone of voice that the other person had? I've done it a million bajillion times, right? They say something, I'm in a bad mood. I read the text in a bad mood and I think, what's wrong with this a-hole? The reality is I should be looking in the mirror saying that statement. Now, audio, very different, right? The audio could be, I get a voicemail from someone. I can now hear them. That's a much better form of communication. Or I'm on the phone with them. Now that's audio only. I can't see them yet, so I don't read their body language. But how much easier is it to communicate in that mode? Much, much easier, right? Because now I can hear their tone of voice. I can make some interpretations and determinations about how they feel and their intent. Once I go to video or in person, I'm leveraging eyes and ears and in person smell and hopefully not taste. And so we've got all the senses mostly, but if we're having lunch together, maybe then. And so we can start to utilize more and more of our senses, which means we can be tuned in. And as we add more senses, we unlock more emotional capacity in the relationship building, and it can go faster. So how do we use this, though? That's really the question.
Well, the reality is we have to use all of it, right? Because you can't live on the phone with your leads, your clients, and your past clients.
I'll take care of that.
Somebody's knocking at our door. Sorry, guys. So you can't be in constant communication. In fact, too much communication, so this is so nuanced, too much communication gets weird. Because now, if you're harping on someone too much, they get creeped out. They're going to go work with someone else that has just the right balance of communication. How many of you guys have ever been awkwardly and uncomfortably approached by someone and they just are in too much communication? Yeah, a lot of us, right? Yep. Especially when you're talking about things like phone calls. Or, standing in my bubble. Yeah, sometimes personal space, right? That's a big one. Like we say, sometimes you can't send too many emails. You can't this, you can't that. There is too much of everything. Carrots are good for you, but if you eat too many carrots, it's not good for you. So where's the balance and how do you strike the balance? Because we know that you're going to have to keep in communication with people, but you don't want to hump their leg and become the dog that they want to avoid at all costs.
Yeah. I love that. By the way, Super Steve says, this is my dance space. This is your dance space.
Yours. Exactly.
12 inches.
But sometimes you need to dance together. Sometimes there's that like slow dance, hands on the shoulder, swaying back and forth, like in middle school, right?
I love it, Steve.
So, okay. So let's talk then about modes of communication, because this is really important to understand if you're going to create a communication plan with your clients that makes sense.
I like her haircut in this picture, by the way. All right, so I've got the same one. So passive communication versus what we're calling opportunity communication on through to active communication. We're going to cover what each of these is today and give you a lot of examples, but passive communication is one directional communication and the rejection possibility is low. So a good example would be I send you a postcard, right? You received my postcard. I have now communicated with you, but we are not in communication. I've communicated with intent at you, but it's one directional. And the rejection possibility is low, right? Meaning for me as the salesperson, if you take my postcard and you're like, what the heck is this loser? And you throw it in your trash can, I don't know that happened. So my emotions are not tied to the potential for rejection. And that's a big deal for salespeople. What's opportunity communication?
So opportunity communication are those instances when you have the potential for two-way communication. Mm-hmm. So it means that you issue some sort of a prompt, like a call to action, an offer, for example. Mm-hmm. You could send an offer to run a CMA for somebody. That is, they don't necessarily have to respond, but it opens the door to communication in two ways. So it always says, I initiate. If you don't respond, I can re-engage to try to get you to respond.
Right. But the prompting is the important part there, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Cool. And of course, the rejection possibility is higher because if I send you a text message and it has a call to action or some sort of a prompt for a response and you don't respond, I might feel a little hurt, I feel a little frustrated, but I still have the opportunity for more communication, right?
And in fact, in this category, opportunity communication, I would say that ghosting is the most common response. And it's also the most common type of rejection that you'll experience. Meaning most people don't text you back, hey, loser, lose my number, never contact me again. More often it's 2023. Most people just ignore the message and move on about their life. And it doesn't mean they don't like you or didn't like the message. It might mean that they were busy or getting their hair cut or, in the middle of changing a tire. It doesn't really matter, but we don't know. And then active communication. This one's big. Active communication is I'm on a phone call with you. Active communication is I'm having lunch with you, or I'm at a meeting, or we're at an event together, or we're on a Zoom call. Those are probably all the most common versions. It's two directional, meaning I talk, you talk. Hopefully you talk more than I talk if I'm doing it correctly. And also that the rejection possibility in these circumstances is now what? The highest. Because if I were to ask you a question like, would you like to go ahead and get that listing signed? While we're having this conversation, that's active rejection to my face, and it's the scariest type of rejection that we face, right? Which is why sometimes we avoid this category in favor of passive or passive voice.
So question for you, because this, I mean, normally this would have passive and active communication. Everybody can agree that that would be, those are kind of the fundamental elements when we're talking about this, right? But our world has changed. And that's why we added that opportunity communication, because there is a whole new thing now. It used to be when you got a phone call, you answered the phone. I mean, and in my family, I was one of those families where there was a proper way to answer the phone and an improper way.
Richmond residents, how may I help you?
There you go. Exactly. And so, so we all kind of know what that means. But nowadays, when your phone rings, who feels kind of like it's an imposition? I'm like,
invaded.
Who is caught? I mean, when somebody knocks at your door, like we just did, I mean, talk about the ultimate interruption. We are just downright like the recluses, like looking through the window, the peepholes going like, who's at my house? And it used to be that people would knock on your door all the time. Your phone would ring all the time. Now we have email, we have text message, and it's very nuanced. So give me some examples. Let's start with the easy one. How about throw a couple of passive communication examples into the thread? What would everybody say is a passive communication skill right now, or not skill, but modality?
So remembering that passive is one directional with low, social media post, absolutely. A Facebook post, you bet. Thanks, Daniel. Joanne? What other types of passive communication? These are one directional. A text could be, Michelle, could be. Signs for sure. Call me if you need anything, Delita says. A door drop. Yeah, I just dropped something off, but not trying to actually see you. You bet. Any other ideas? Yes, flyers. Somebody says flyers. You bet. Any type of a mailer, a drop off, anything that's written that I'm just going to leave for you or send to you. You bet. These are really good, guys.
Yep. Okay, how about an example of what we call an opportunity?
So remember, this one prompts a two-way communication, but doesn't necessarily go all the way to two-way communication unless they respond. So sure, that could be an email. It could be, let us know if you'd like a Thanksgiving pie, Joanne says. Leaving a voicemail, Indy says. Daniel Ramirez says text. John Sellers says text, you bet. Krista says door knocking. Could be, you bet, right? Because maybe we're prompting them. That could be. If we get into communication, it might go to active. Anything else? These are great, guys. Great. Handwritten cards. Absolutely could be. And especially if you include like a call to action or a prompt, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to get into a direct communication line. With that, I might drop that more into passive, but I love it. And handwritten does up the ante in terms of the level of communication that you're engaging in there. So that's awesome, Jonathan.
Sure. Okay. And what about active?
Active communication. So active communication is a two-way street, meaning now we're talking to them. We actually gave an example a minute ago. Let's see if you guys can remember. What is active communication? Seeing someone in the grocery store, Joanne says. Yeah, because you're having a conversation.
For sure.
There's two people there. Door knocking, Indy says. You bet. Calling on the phone.
Ask for the listing or other appointment.
Right, because you're in active conversation with the other person.
Okay, so we had, believe it or not, quite a bit of conversation around this because it is so nuanced. So let's take a deeper look at what we mean by each of these individual modes of communication. So passive communication, an email, even if an email has a call to action in it, it's really just one directional. Now, you can make it an opportunity communication by layering some things like sending an email and then sending a text. Now we do this, we're really good at this when we're in an active client situation, right? Like if you have a transaction in progress, you will send an email that has maybe information attached or things that need to be signed. And then you'll text and say, hey, just wanted to let you know, Christine, that I sent that email. It's in your inbox. Take a look and get back to me when you can, right? Or maybe we'll call them and say that. But the email in and of itself is passive communication because it is a one-way street. It is outward bound from you. Same thing with a newsletter.
Well, I just real quick on email, I think about that and I think about how much our world has changed. And a lot of it has to do with the pace of response, right? It used to be that like in World War I, if I wrote a letter to my love back home and then she wrote a letter back to me and I get it back 3.5 months later, we're in communication with each other and that's active. But we expect things to move more quickly these days. So even an email, somebody sees it, they get back to me a day or two later. That's not really a conversation that we're in. It's an email thread. And it's very slow and it's very unintentional in terms of the communication. But yeah, let's move on to newsletter.
I mean, it could be switched around to an opportunity communication, like I said. Sure. It just depends, but it does require some follow-up if you're going to do that. A newsletter, letters, postcards, flyers, advertising. I'm going to put a little asterisk on that one. Those are really just meant to provide information in a one-way direction. And what was your really great example when we were talking about about putting up the billboard?
Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing is we think of billboards. Billboards are a form of communication. They're very one directional. But for instance, if I wanted to communicate something to one of my clients specifically, I wouldn't purchase billboard space to send them that message. That's crazy. The billboard is just kind of a blanket opportunity to send messaging one direction out into the universe. Yes, I do hope something happens on the response part of that. But it's not because I'm in an active communication with one person and thereby building that relationship with that person.
Advertising, ad space on social media, for example, those are pretty passive in terms of communication. They're just putting yourself out there. They're staying front of mind, which is really, really important. We're going to talk a little bit more about that.
By the way, passive doesn't mean bad. Passive means passive. And so I want to make sure that you're hearing this with the right connotation on your ears. Passive might simply mean this is something that we could do to 10,000 people where I can't have 10,000 phone calls, right? But it's going to have to start more passive in order for us to be able to operate on a larger scale. So again, not really labeling good or bad here. We're simply labeling passive versus active, meaning demanding of your time and inactive communication versus low demand on your time, but not as active.
Because remember, we're talking about layers and how do these layers fit together? So you want to have layers of passive communication with opportunity communication with active communication. But just like I said, if you have only active communication, you are going to be the dog that everybody avoids. They are never going to pick up your call because you are so obnoxious.
Or you're going to have a small business. And that's the other thing that can happen if we focus all of our attention, for instance, on this slide, just on the right, is that how many people could I call a week? Well, think about it this way. How many people did you call this week over the last 7 days, right? Well, I called all my clients. Great. How many is that? 150? Probably not, right? And so, well, I called all my past clients. Did you though? And I know from my experienced agents, they're thinking, oh, geez, Louise, calling all my past clients is like 350 or 2,000 or whatever you've got, right? That number optimally will get bigger over time. And so that activity becomes harder. So we have to veer between these lanes. And especially as your business is growing, it's going to demand of you that you understand how to navigate all three of these categories.
So, and remember in passive communication, and we tend to be not stuck in a bad way, but we're just focused more on that 7% of emotional communication in the words that we choose, because most of the time it's just words. When we move into opportunity communication, things like a text message, a social media direct message, voicemail, personalized video messaging. So something that you maybe embed into an email or you send as a text. Somebody brought up the door drop and door knocking. Those to me are big opportunity communications. So think about if you do something like you plant a flag or you put, pumpkins in the fall on everybody's doorstep, or you have a special area or a certain group of people that you do that to. There's a powerful impact that you've been there, you've put it down, you've left a little postcard. But what if you up the game and you stand in front of their house because they're not there, you didn't have an engagement with them, a communication, and you take your phone right here and you're like, "Hi, Jeff, I just wanted to let you know I dropped off your pumpkin this year and I left a little postcard. Sorry I missed you, but I wanted you to know that we are having our Thanksgiving pie drop-off event or pickup event. Can't wait to see you there. I hope you can make it. And also, I'm always looking to help your friends and family. There's nothing that gives me better, that makes me feel better inside than to help out people. So there's some information for referral. If you know anybody that wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate, I'm your girl. Can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye-bye." That's totally different, because the opportunity communication is that, wow, okay, I've given them an opportunity to get back to me on a referral, to get back to me just to say hi, to say thank you for what I dropped off at their house, and then also an invite to engage in an event.
Hopefully you've thought inside yourself just now, there is a huge difference between here's your pumpkin and here's your pumpkin personalized with your name. And by the way, who do you know who needs to buy, sell, or invest? Or if you know of someone, give me a call. That's a call to action or a CTA or a prompt. We can call it any of those things. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is to get a response to happen. Some communication doesn't need to do that. It's just a reminder that our brand exists, right? When I drive by, speaking of billboards, when I drive by a billboard for Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola's intent is not for me to give them a phone call. It's to remind me that their product exists. That's it. Because they're looking for brand saturation, right? If you hear Jake Rockwell talk a lot, or he sells a lot of houses, what's he looking for? Brand awareness and saturation. He's talked about this a number of times in here. Why? Because we all want to be sure that if somebody says, name 3 realtors in town, your name is one of them. And if it isn't, right, we were asked a while back with one of our guest speakers, he said, is it more important what you know or who you know? And the answer is neither. The answer is it's who knows you and knows that you're in real estate.
That's it.
That's it. And that's what we're trying to accomplish with brand awareness. When we go to opportunity communication, we're actually trying to start a conversation again.
Yeah. And personalizing it. And then active communication, obviously, is a phone call, a Zoom call, an in-person meeting, like an event or a pop by or something like that, door knocking, listing appointment, door knocking, all of those things where you're going to have face-to-face conversation. But now we're adding in that 55% of body language, because people can see you. You're going to feel differently about it when you're layering words used, the intonation of those words, and body language. So let's look. So passive communication, mostly about the words, keeps you in front of people. It's top of mind so that you are the first person that they contact, reinforces your brand and creates market awareness. It's a good educational tool. It delivers information. People don't care that you send out a newsletter. They care about what's in the newsletter. So it's got to provide value, or they are just going to delete it. Infinite scalability, like Jeff said, I can send 500,000 copies of my newsletter to inform people, but I cannot send 500,000 personalized video text messages to people. So you're looking at passive communication to maximize that in automation. Opportunity communication, it's mostly about that prompt, right? So there's a call to action. There's some kind of follow-up. Remember, if they don't respond, you have an open avenue for follow-up.
Don't let it die.
Which is great. And it gives you the chance to comfortably follow up. So that's awesome. It's personalized. It gathers information. Remember when Joanne said asking questions? This is your gathering information time instead of pushing information. It's time sensitive, which means it has a limited little window and you cannot automate it. Active communication is all about that interaction. It's highly personal. Full interaction, both parties engaging. So if you call people and you're like, I've been in communication, and all you did was call and leave a voicemail, you did not have communication or contact with them. You left a voicemail and you have to follow up. Active communication is two-way street intentionally. And it is the closest to the point of sale. So you always want to be moving toward active communication. It's the exchange of information. And again, it can't be automated.
So with that, we can overlay these relationship types. And so we're going to get out of theoretical a little bit here into, so what do I do with all this, Jeff and Lexy? How do I use this to sell more houses and to make more people want to work with me? That's great. And we're going to accomplish that. And we're going to talk about the 3 types of people that we're addressing. And then how do we engage with them so that in these cycles, we understand where to come into the conversation and where are we headed with things, right? The past doesn't matter. Where are we now? Where are we headed, right? It's Google Maps. Where do we want to go and how do we get there? I love it. So we've got 3 relationship types: leads, active clients, and past clients, and their communication needs. Let's break it down. Leads. When someone is in lead status, meaning that they're not active and they're not a past client, that means that they need communication to build relationship because they don't have one yet with you, and to establish that you can help them, right? We said know, like, and trust. We also need immediate personalized communication with a purpose. And so what does that mean? Well, we've talked about, for instance, online lead generation. We know that we need to call them in under 5 minutes. We need 10 days of active communication, meaning, or at least prompted communication, maybe opportunity communication if we can't get them on the phone. But we're trying for 10 days to get into active communication with this person, because without that quick connect, it's very likely that we're going to lose our full connect with this person. And now they're just going to become kind of a slowly rotting grape on the vine. Not a very good thing.
Remember, with the lead status, what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, are they somebody who's going to buy right now? Do they need me to help bridge the gap? So do I need to connect them with a lender, for example? Do they need to be set up on MLS? Or are they just kind of looking around? They're getting married in 6 months and they want to buy a house in the first year. So then that you want to put them on some sort of a drip campaign, right? But unless you hit that active communication status immediately, you will never know, and you will miss the opportunity because they will find someone else that will get in communication with them.
Correct. So under active clients now, these folks need ongoing active communication. In fact, we could adjust that to say active communication. What does this mean? It means when a client is active, they need active communication with you. How many people have ever had, and I've done this, by the way, so guilty as charged right here, have ever had like a listing and it starts to maybe get a little bit stale because you priced it a little too hot, right? And now as time goes on, what do? You start to avoid the active communication in favor of what? The low rejection communication. Well, I sent them an email and a text, but I do it every week. And so I'm being
guilty.
a good agent, right? But, well, did you call them? Well, no, if you're communicating, you're not communicating, you're avoiding, right? And we've all done it. I've certainly done it myself. Why? The answer is psychology. We're avoiding the potential for rejection. What is the rejection here? Listen, I've been on the market for 6 months and I don't want to be on the market for 6 months. And they feel like you are not doing your job. And there's an argument there we could go into about pricing and some other things, but it doesn't really matter. When we're avoiding that, that means we're not treating our active clients as active clients anymore. And when we don't treat an active client as an active client, they become not your client anymore. I promise you that. And then past clients.
Past clients, as we know, they need a mix of passive communication, opportunity communication, and active communication.
So kind of on this, like,
you're going to put them on your newsletter drip campaign. You're going to reach out to them every once in a while and be like, hey, I just sold a house in your neighborhood, wanted to pull a current CMA for you guys so you know what your equity position is. That's just great stuff. You're going to have active communication because you're going to reach out to them every once in a while just to check in, maybe on their little house anniversary. You're going to do some other things there and invite them to events, which let's look at. I want to see what this looks like.
All right. So we put together a visual because a lot of us, myself included, are visual learners. So that helps a ton. And so let's take a look at what does this really look and feel like? Walk us through this.
Okay. So we have passive communication there at the baseline, not because it's the lowest form, but because it's the foundational form. Opportunity is right in that midline, and active is at the top, because the more active communication you have, the better relationship, the deeper and more personalized relationship you actually have. Look, I've sold houses to people that I've never met face to face, ever, ever, ever. Never even been on a Zoom call with them or FaceTime or anything else. The reality is, I had a lot of communication with them on the phone. And I think many of us have done that, right? So I think that the pinnacle, the top of the heap, the up part of the cycle of communication, so thereby upcycling, is to build that deep relationship over time. And it requires all of these things. So let's start with past clients. So we said, if you've already dealt with somebody, if you've already closed a transaction with them, you're not going to bring them in at the very top. You're not just going to like pick up the phone for no reason. You probably have them, like I said, on some sort of a drip email, newsletter campaign. You're going to send them cards, whatever it is that you're going to do. And they're going to see your ads, because you always want to be running. You want to have some sort of a branding campaign. And that means that you want to have ads wherever it is. If you do it in your local community, if you do it on social media, whatever, but you want to have a presence so that they keep you in mind. I have had past clients before that I have found out have sold with someone else. And I'm like, what the heck? We had a great relationship. And they literally, you guys, just kind of forgot me. And somebody else was in their RAS. Somebody else had an ad up and they were like, oh, look, I need to sell my house. There we go.
In fact, I've had this example before illustrated to me, and I'll have you guys just try this in your own head. You don't have to put it in the chat, but just really quickly, as fast as you possibly can in your head, name 3 insurance salespeople. Just to yourself, you don't have to do it in the chat. Name 3. The average person stalls out at 1, maybe 2, right? I can name 1. It was our gal in Arizona. She's amazing. Loved her to death. Think that that's an epic person. Why? Stayed in touch, constant reminders, brand awareness, fabulous customer service, like just absolutely willing to recommend her all the time. Number 2, I don't have a number 2, right? Like I literally can't think of a second one right at the moment. So it's just because I'm drawing a blank. So when you're put on the spot, it's really easy to remember your number 1. Hard as heck on number 2, and number 3 feels like a pipe dream, right? Like that's just crazy. But your clients will have the exact same experience when it comes to name 3 real estate agents. They'll name the one they can think of easily because the name is everywhere. They see it like Coca-Cola on the billboard, right? Number 2 is a stretch. Number 3 might not exist. Number 4, forget it. That's not even a number at that point. Yeah.
Yep. So the opportunity is text to prompt a call, voicemail to promote an event, a video message on the house anniversary or a drop by. I gave an example of that. And then the active communication is an active call. Hey, I'm just calling. You're at the 6-month mark. How are things going? Have you guys used your house, your home warranty yet? You do a pop by just to check in. You want to invite them to an event. I like to think of these with past clients. Think of these little humps or this upcycling in 4. And think that actively, you need to have some sort of active in-person or at least a communication that you're actually exchanging. So a dialogue with them every quarter. So Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4.
So 4 humps, right? Which is quarterly. And I love that. And by the way, all of these examples that we're going to give you, and you notice from the first graphic, they all ride the same wave. Right? They all ride the same wave, which means this wave is cyclical. And the question is the duration of the cycle, but the cycle needs to ebb and flow so that it will most positively impact the person and their relationship with you. Do you want to continue on to active?
Yep.
Awesome. Let's do it. So active clients, coming back to this one. So when we're dealing with an active client, they're going to predominantly, and we said this earlier, need active communication with you. That's why we call them active instead of current clients. So active clients need active communication. What does this mean? It means they need phone calls. It means they need you to be on a Zoom call with them, to have an appointment with them. Predominantly, it's going to be telephone communication. It's not that you can't simultaneously be peppering in some opportunity conversations, et cetera. But predominantly, most of what you're doing needs to be about the back and forth, because you're trying to put a transaction together and close it out with them, which means you need call and response. You need ping pong in your communication with them. Once that contract closes, then this is where we can start to cycle down, because the intensity of our relationship needs to breathe a little bit, right? They're moving into their house. They're moving on with their life, right? I bought my insurance.
They're about as done with you as you are with them. Let's be real for a little while. You got to take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit and let them move in.
Right. Plus, they're not about to, generally speaking, not about to buy a second house a week after they buy their first one. So we're in good shape in terms of allowing it to cycle into opportunity and passive. You'll notice we didn't say to fall apart. It's just to allow it to naturally breathe a little bit. So what do we do? At the very beginning, we're still active. The contract closes, we ask in person. If some people go to closings, that's great. Ask there. Some people are just going to make a call. Some people like to do a pop by after closing. All of that is awesome. However,
move in day, take pizza, whatever it is you do.
Like my very first house I ever bought was a foreclosure for under $100,000 in North Carolina. My real estate agent, she stopped by and she bought me like a little toolkit because she knew I was going to do some work. And it was, not the greatest one you've ever seen. But to this day, I remember Linda. She was incredible. And I really appreciated the little IKEA toolkit she brought to me. And as it cycles down, then we're going to go through opportunity communication, which is now we can text them for a review if we didn't already get that, or a referral. We could even voicemail, say, hey, hope things are going well. And we said for referral. Why? Because that's part of what we're doing. That's the opportunity, is for the referral. It's not really for the second transaction, unless they're an investor and they're going to buy a house a week or something like that. Good for them. And then when we get to passive, this is passive communication. Now we can add them to our newsletter. This might all happen in the same week, guys. Right. We might add them to our AVM. What's an AVM? It's like a Zestimate, but some people are using things like HomeBot or the free market reports that we all get through KV Core here at EXP for free. And then we can add them to a retargeting campaign on something like Facebook or Instagram, so that they're getting targeted in a custom audience and they're constantly seeing our brand for like $1 a month, 6 times a month. They can see us.
And now they've transitioned into the past client cycle.
Yep.
So once they hit down here back into passive, they'll retrend back up, because now they're past clients, and hopefully you'll invite them to your little annual event or multiple events. And you're going to aim again then for those active communications 4 times a year.
And you're always upcycling back to something, right? So it might be that you're upcycling to take them to coffee, just to say, hey, might be that you're upcycling to remind them that you're going to do your big like Star Wars event at the movie theater or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But that upcycle will now be to a high engagement opportunity that they're cycling into with you, so that you can continue to reinforce and rebuild that relationship over time. The
last one is leads.
This one's big.
So leads are interesting because they really enter at the active zone. Whether they are active or intending to be active or not, you need to be. So we've already talked about that. That response is, okay, I've got them. They're hot. I've got to figure out what they're in this for immediately. So it starts with that phone call. Jeff said it, 5 minutes or less. That is really what everybody's aiming for, because if you don't, someone else will. Then you're going to move them into the follow-up with a text, or you're going to call and leave a voicemail if you need to. You're going to send a personal video. If they've left their cell phone number, you can again say, hi, I'm Lexy. You were on my website. I just wanted to let you know, put a face with the name, with the website. I'm here to help you. There's nothing that I love more than to help people buy and sell properties. So let's get in touch. I'd love to set up an appointment to chat. Eventually, if they do not respond and you can't keep them at that active status and turn them into an active client, then you're going to put them into kind of this nurture cycle, and they enter your up cycle just like everybody else. So then they go onto a drip email, they get retargeted, they start getting your newsletter, and then throughout time before the next quarter, sometime in there, you're going to be sending them new text messages. Hey, how's your thing going? Would you like me to send you a lender information? Hey, here's some interesting information about the market, something to engage them on that more opportunity level. And then you're going to recycle and call them. Now, that may not be quarterly, it may be more frequently with leads. But I would encourage you, if you have local people buying that are in your lead status, invite them to your events every year.
In fact,
or
on
create
that,
a special event for them.
I was just thinking on that upcycle, as you're coming back toward that next call, because remember, you're always trying to prompt the next thing, is that you could literally be sending a text message that says, hey, name. You could send this to 100 people. That's fine. Through KV Core, we can do that easily. And to say, hey, name, I noticed a house today that looks like it would have been a great fit for you based on what you had previously been looking at. Are you still in the market to buy coming up? Don't tell them what the house is. Just leave it open-ended. There's a lot of curiosity built in. We call that a curiosity bomb. And so we put a lot of curiosity in that statement. It's open-ended. We're very likely to prompt a response. So it's not a direct call to action. Do you need to buy a house? That's a different thing. Hey, I found something. Is it still what you're looking for? Right? We're trying to add value, but we're doing it at the level of like, hey, I wouldn't want to send you value you don't need. Let me know if you need it. And that would be amazing. Joanne says, can you explain what a typical newsletter would contain? This is pretty dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, it really is whatever you want. And I think that newsletters can be a great opportunity to both inform and personalize yourself, your brand to people. So I don't know if somebody on the line here has a great newsletter that they send out that they're willing to share, pop that into the chat, and maybe we'll be able to share that really quickly. Some of our clients have newsletters that should always have a market update. And most MLSs have market update information. So you can pull that out on a monthly basis. There are some specialized companies that provide really in-depth stuff, which might be a little too much for your client, but it just depends. There are fun things to do around town. You can do a calendar of events. You can highlight. We like to encourage people to embed video in their newsletters, because that, and put those up toward, you want those above the line. So above the fold. So where, the first page that you open up on an email without scrolling, you want them to be able to see something interactive. So that really should be a link. So it could be a new listing. It could be a whole bunch of things. A review.
Liz just said there's also the market report that you can automatically send from KV Core.
Yep.
For me personally, and I will say I'm probably the hardest working lazy person you'll ever meet. And so personally, I would send the KV Core market report. Why? Because it's better than doing nothing, which is what I've noticed about 98+% of folks do, which is, well, I don't know what to send, so I won't send anything. Well, hack that real quick. Go into KV Core, click the little market report button under each of your either active leads, current or past clients, doesn't matter, and just put them on that as a bi-weekly little drip that they get from you that says, in this, in this area of town, whatever, you can drill it down by cities or by zip codes or whatever you want to do. But what it will tell you, the property values are up a little bit more, or that that there's a decline in number of listings, and et cetera, et cetera. It might give them a little bit of an idea what their house is worth, but it's still going to prompt them to get back in touch with you. Some people are really concerned with how let's call it sexy that thing looks. I don't think that's as important as you want to believe. And in fact, I remember this great newsletter that we literally got printed out regularly from this 90+-year-old couple who used to live in our neighborhood in Arizona, and they would send this once a month. And it would just,
and they were, by the way, realtors. They were a real estate team, and they were phenomenal.
They were killing it. Here's why. That little piece of paper on one side, it said active, pending, sold. And it was just everything that had happened in the neighborhood. And the solds would be like the last 3 to 6 months, depending on how many they could get.
You guys. It was a list.
Just nasty. The graphics were horrible. I think they'd been photocopying the same logo since, 1940. Like it was embarrassingly bad. They did a destructive amount of business. It was awesome. Why? Because what they had on there was incredibly valuable. And guess who read it every time it came to their house? Me.
They also had restaurant reviews.
Yep.
They also had a recipe every time.
Yep.
I mean, it was kind of old school, but you know what? People are really hungry for that connection right now. And so if you can impart knowledge and you can create connection, you're in like Flynn. I love that Liz says it's part of her closing process. She signs them up for the update and she does it every 28 days. It's kind of cool. And I think even including, remember, I'm a big proponent of tell people what's important, but tell them why it's important and why it matters to them. So what did they get out of knowing what getting an update on the generalized real estate market is 28 days? Well, because your job as a realtor, as a good realtor, is to continue to educate them on property value, on knowledge about their house. You could put something out about, maintenance tricks, tips and tricks for maintenance in a rainy location, what to do after a hurricane. Yeah. What happens if there's, smoky conditions? What should we do? Change your filters more often. I mean, you guys, you are the experts and there's so much stuff. You could create a little, did you know, ? And then just put some little interesting fact there. People really want to know that stuff.
Here's a hack that I'll give you on this though. If making your newsletter takes you more than about 5 minutes a month, you're probably doing it wrong, especially with the advent of things like ChatGPT and some of these other elements that are out there now that allow you to streamline this. The truth of the matter is it's a marketing piece, no matter how you want to slice it. And marketing is not as high power as prospecting, meaning reaching out and directly creating contact, connection, and communication, active communication with another human being. So it's an important part of your process that shouldn't be neglected, but it doesn't, I say 5 minutes, maybe 10, right? But set a timeline, because the old adage in business is all work expands to fill the time allotted for it. Meaning, if I give myself an entire week to create a newsletter, I'm going to be working on newsletter for a week, which is not a great
templates. And it should 100%. Take you 30 minutes or less to really personalize and make it valuable for people.
Love it.
I think it's great.
We went from 5 to 10 to 30.
Well, I think if you're gonna personalize and embed a video and all that stuff, it does take a little bit of time. Yeah. It does, but you don't have to do all that. You can just get some basic ones. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yep. So let's cover this examples slide really quickly. Just to summarize, leads need communication to build relationship and establish that you can help them, but they need that personalized communication with a purpose. And that's why we wanted to show you that graphic so that you could understand that cycle through a lead. Remember that active clients need ongoing, but they're also going to need ongoing active, and they skip the hump until you're done, right? Until you close. And then past clients need a mix of passive opportunity and active communication. We can go on to questions and then also get some feedback, because we've got so many top producers on this call. It kind of blows my mind. And so we want to hear from all of you guys. In addition, how are you leveraging this concept of communication upcycling, especially toward a transactional moment or a transactional nexus, right? Where we know we're going to be transactional with a person again or for the first time. Or if that question was too complicated, what's in your newsletter?
So is your question about transactional or relational?
Both. Because what's interesting is they go together, I think, if done correctly. And Christine, by the way, is who's talking, Christine Kites. And if anybody doesn't know, amazing real estate agent. And so, Christine, here, let me add a spotlight here so everyone can see you. There we go. So the reality is, I believe that it's true that as your relationship builds, so does the likelihood of you being able to do a transaction with this person. I think, in fact, most agents would concur with that. Is it possible to have kind of a cold relationship with a person and still do a deal? Yes. Do 10 deals and do all the deals for their family? Probably not, which means as a business concept, it's probably in our best interest to really focus.
I don't want to hear the crowd.
Oops, gonna mute that one out. It's probably in our best interest to build a relationship as we build towards transactions. So I guess the question is, what are you doing, for instance, Christine, to build relationships with your current, with your prospects, with your leads, with your past clients over time?
Right. I think that it's one of those things that you always have to remember to revamp. So we are constantly in we just had a conversation of, okay, let's relook at what we're doing. Where are holes? What do we need to be doing better? How can we communicate at this point, and this point with our clientele? How can we stay in touch with them? Are we doing it by email, by text, by pop buys? So we're doing a variety of those points of communication, but it's everything. And so you really do have to look at all of the things that you guys have mentioned and really just say, where am I at every one of those? And in a database, do you have your database put together so that you can communicate with it in that way? So do you have it all put together, or does it you need to take some time to get it correct so you can start talking to it correctly? So,
Well,
and you got to start somewhere.
You've closed, I mean, 1 trillion transactions in your career. So you've got this humongous list of past clients. It's not possible to call all of them every day or every week or anything like that's crazy making like that wouldn't be happening. So how do you cycle so that you're ensuring that you stay in relationship with those folks over time, so that when they go to do their next transaction, or their mom or dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle needs to do a deal, that they're like, oh, Christine's our person. She's amazing. What are you doing to impact that over time, other than calling them every day, which wouldn't work for the number of past clients that you have?
Right. And it comes back to your database and organizing them correctly so that you can talk to the right people more often than other people, and how you need to touch everybody. So some of it's all email communication, and then your top 20% in your database is getting talked to more often. You're plugging in regularly, you're sending notes, you're stopping by. So you have to organize your database to talk to it correctly, because there is too many people. And so you do have to categorize them.
Yep. Love that. Okay. Tyler.
Hey. How you doing?
Hey, Tyler.
So my biggest thing on like what I think is like proficiency is I talked about it a couple weeks ago, but Sphere A and Sphere B. And your Sphere A clients, and it's all like what Christine said, it's all database. And your Sphere A, who actively like bring you referrals, send you business, and like in like very cultivated relationships, that's once a month, no matter what. Right. And that can be in a chalk block of like a 3-day time span where it's like 20 outgoing texts or phone calls, right, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Right. Sphere B, the people that you like routinely keep up with who occasionally send you business, and that's quarterly, like no matter what, at least quarterly. Right. And like those touches, right, along with and just like actively engaging on like social media, right? Like keeping people, like always adding people and following people, right? And like reaching out based on those things, right? Like you're always the presence, just consistently and constantly, and you're involved in their personal lives. And my big thing, like with Sphere A and Sphere B, is really like we've already transacted in the past. You know what I do? I don't talk about real estate, and I that's like the most important thing, right? Because like you're developing a relationship and a friendship, right? And if you have that, you're going to be the go-to person no matter what, every single time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. And that's that upcycling. So you guys are upcycling in a way that you're building that relationship so in depth that they've kind of transcended even the relationship, the transactional component, and they're just part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Which is great, which, and it can be done in any size community. There are some difficulties if you're in a really big place. It's not as tight, but it is doable. And I love that. And I love, this just goes to show that depending on how you categorize things and how you organize your database, it still all comes down to communication style and layering that communication.
Well, and what I really like there as well, Tyler, is that you're purposeful about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we didn't try to do today is to say, you must call everyone this amount of time, and you must call these other people this amount of time, because what we've noticed is that different top producing agents do different things. And so you can still be a top producer, but what I know that you must do is know what you are doing.
Well, yeah, there's
right?
that.
You have to actually have a plan. And if your plan is, I don't know, I just kind of, well, just kind of is not a business plan. Hope is not a business plan. So you need to have a plan. And as my dad used to say, plan the work and then work the plan. And I think that that's the real drop down here. I do see
John
Sellers.
Hey guys, awesome stuff in there. You know, I'm talking to a lot of agents these days, and I'm finding that, you know, people don't realize that communication is a skill and it's a tool. Mm-hmm. And that many of us weren't taught how to communicate growing up, really the most effective way. And that we also lose the skill if we don't remember it because we get lazy.
Yep.
And so I'm talking to a lot of agents right now, and they're losing deals. So we're talking about the active side now, right, on this, and they're losing deals right now. And they're going, what's going on? What's happening? This client bailed on this or this happened. I'm like, well, we've got a very different market today. Most all the agents that I deal with today haven't been in a down market. It's a very different way that you have to communicate today. And so something I was thinking about today is like, okay, first of all, is like when you're communicating is we have to communicate more. We have to think about what books are we reading to learn how to communicate at a higher level. What are the, I think I put a video together out on the community, I'm not sure, just this week on it, which is funny. But what are those skills that we're learning? And then what are the do's and don'ts, Jeff, that in Lexy, like, you know, texting, I find a lot of younger people text a lot. I text, we all do now. There's so many communication levels, but texting should never be used for, you know, there's rules, like it should be never used for tough conversations.
That's
you know,
true.
it should never be used for too good of conversations, right? It's, you know, so these rules, but that's some of the things I'd be thinking about today is just, you know, it's so awesome that we need to keep upcycling, but what do we need? How do we need to keep learning to communicate better? Because the better we communicate verbally, non-verbally, and you hit it so much on the head, Lexy, as I was telling somebody, is like, you know, they were having some communications with agents and realizing that when we're not, you know, especially with a client, when we're not with that client face to face, and we're talking about a home inspection and they're scared. So remember, a year ago, they got the home inspection and they were like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can ask for anything. And the whole media was telling them that's what they should do. Their friends were telling them to do, their parents. Now they get something and they go, oh crap, even if I got a good deal, I think I overpaid. The media is telling me I should be really freaked out and that I probably shouldn't buy. So do you think you have to communicate differently about the home inspection today than you did a year ago? Do you think you might want to make sure you're doing a Zoom conversation with them so you can see their body language versus just over the phone? Because you're not working just against, now you will actually do a disservice to them if they drop out of the deal because you're not communicating to them because there's so many negatives going on in the market. So these are things, you know, this upcycling and how we think and what we do is so critical right now of how we communicate. And it's, I mean, the difference is 1 or 2 deals a year. Yeah. I mean, think about that. Most of our markets in Oregon, most of the deals are a minimum of $10,000 commissions. 2 deals, because we communicate correctly, is $20,000. Now, $20,000 may not seem like a lot to all y'all. Y'all are rich, but you know, 2 deals over 5 years, that's $100,000 difference. If you put that in the bank and you're 35, that's $1 million in 20 years, just because you increased your communication skills.
You know,
little
John,
things that.
What this reminds me of, and you're so on point, and that is, you know, that saying where good food cannot save a meal with bad service, but great service can save a bad meal. So, and that's the difference. When you have a communication, I mean, we're the experts, you guys. Even if you're new, you need to educate yourself, have a mentor, get up to speed real quick, like, so that you can speak with some authority and with some expertise. But it is your job, literally, it is your job to help people sort out the fear from an inspection, right? To help them understand what is important, what isn't important, what that means, what it doesn't mean, what the outcomes will be if you do this, that, or the other. And it's much easier to do that in person. I can save and salvage a very difficult situation with a client if I can, at bare minimum, be in a Zoom call, on the phone, yes. But man, if you're only texting or only emailing, forget it. You're dead in the water. You're leaving it up to chance.
And it's also a fear-based response. I would argue that the reason why many times, and we'll coach around this often, and I know you do, John, if an agent has a tough conversation, they choose to send a text message, it's because they're avoiding the potential for rejection or the fear of that conversation being uncomfortable. And so being able to engage in as an authority without being uncomfortably authoritative, right? This is all communication subdynamics is why this has to, I love that you said, what books are you reading? What courses are you doing? Like, how are you really educating yourself on this? And John has done this a ton. So this is how you build this part of your business. And as it turns out, this is a major part of your business. If you find that your business isn't transacting at a higher level, it's probably because your communication isn't communicating at a very high level yet.
And that's why upcycle means you're always keeping it focused in the up, which means up to the highest potential of the relationship, which means that while you're going to have some of those, automated emails and that sort of thing, you also must include potential conversations and face-to-face, mano-a-mano, person-to-person relationship building events. That's it. It's got to happen. It's all of them. And we understand that it is all of them. That's why it's like, please, put in all of those elements. Such good points. Okay. We have we're right at time. So Michael, take us out here, buddy. Last question.
Yeah. So first off, great job, guys. This is huge. Relationships are everything in our business, right? So, you guys hit the nail on the head on a lot of stuff. John just touched on a lot of the stuff that I actually wanted to say. Mostly just to recap, we've got to know our clientele, right? You can have the smartest clients in the world and they don't know what they don't know. And I'm actually going through that right now with one of my friends, one of my close buddies. I engaged with him. I work with him daily as a football coach. And one thing led to another. He talked about wanting to sell his piece of land and buy a new house, blah, blah, blah. As we progressed, he was almost going to go without a realtor because he didn't realize that my fee as a buyer's agent could be negotiated with the seller. And he wanted a new build. So it was already built into the deal. He was going to go unrepresented and he doesn't know anything about real estate. He admitted that, but he thought that was his only way to save money. And I was like, listen, man, let me educate you, right? And you've got to be careful how you talk to people, right? Because he is educated. I don't want to make him feel dumb, right? I don't want to make anybody feel dumb. So how you communicate is huge. And you guys gave great tips today. And I think it's awesome. I really appreciate you guys.
Well, really appreciate that, Mike, and totally agree with everything that you've said. So we'll wrap up on that note. Listen, at the end of the day, we all know that communication is incredibly important. We know for a fact that how we communicate is super dynamic and needs to shift across time. And we wanted to give you some easy thoughts, but particularly this visualization about upcycling, meaning if you find that your communication isn't delivering what you need it to deliver, the bottom line is you may need to cycle up to the next higher form of communication modality. If you're like, well, I've been sending them a ton of emails, I can't possibly figure out what's wrong. The reality is email might not be the strong method that you need right now. Maybe cycle up to a text that says, hey, when can we jump on a call from that, right? Jump up to the call, from the call, maybe say, hey, let's just set an appointment. Let's sit down. All this is really visual. So again, what we're doing is we're trying to cycle up to the next level all the time so that we can potentially increase the potency of our communication. Ultimately, this is going to save you time and earn you more money. All right, guys, I hope that helps everyone for today. We've absolutely loved being here and being part of the community. This is our very favorite part of the week, is spending time with you guys. And thank you for being with us today.
Yep. We just want you guys to live to your highest potential. If we can be part of that, we are so honored. We love you guys. Go have a great week. Don't forget to get signed up for EXPCon. We will be there. We want to see as many of you as possible. Let's blow the lid off of Las Vegas, baby.
Love it. We'll see you guys there. All right.